do it there. Just here. Yay. We've got to have the recording. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to Mastering a Drop, a real view of recovery, where I show up each time. You'd think I'd be a pro at this by now, but Anyway, welcome. This week, I have Melissa Deely here with me, and I know she's not a stranger to our environment. She's been on here several times. I just love having her be a guest with me, and I am excited that we're going to be having this amazing conversation about, our esteem needs, where they're resting, how can I evaluate where I am with that, and what are some steps I can, be doing, or even, what are some of those goals or aspirations, because I don't really care for the word goal. What are some of those aspirations that I can look for or start to create and cultivate that are going to give me some momentum going forward, right? So, but I also know that there are some of you who maybe this is your first time ever watching, and it's your first time ever meeting Miss Melissa, my dear friend and personal health practitioner. So Melissa, why don't you say hello to everybody, introduce yourself, and yeah.
Thank you, Trisha. I'm excited to be here. I always love working with you because our work is so aligned. And thank you to those watching. And just a very quick introduction. I'm a registered health coach and integrative health practitioner, and have recently completed NLP and timeline therapy and hypnotherapy training. So I work with people in helping get to the root cause of health issues and healing the physical body and also the emotional and mental bodies as well. That's it in a nutshell. Do you want more of an intro to that? Look at your face there, Trisha.
Because for me, it muted for a second, and I'm not positive why, but it was only like one word. So I was like, oh no, what happened?
It's working.
I was trying to turn off the Facebook Messenger notifications while, anyway, we're just gonna have to deal with the distraction. I don't know why it's being noisy today. It's supposed to be silent. Anyway, I love that you are here, because you're right. Our work is so aligned, and it's very important. So let's talk about, first of all, let's talk about what our esteem needs, right? I have two different types of esteems that I look at, and I have personal esteem and I have self-esteem. And so if I was to give maybe just a brief, because I know me being brief is kind of a laugh out loud funny, but for me, personal esteem has everything to do with inside of me. It's me. It's things that I need for me. And so that might sound like a feeling of personal and interpersonal security. It might be my sense of purpose, a feeling of being capable, and having trust in myself, as well as being trusted by others, which then folds into my self-esteem, where what I look at self-esteem as is involving in my environment, or environments, if you will. So that social sense of belonging, and again, having that trust, a sense of contribution, a feeling of influence, self-control, and reward, right? Like my relationships are feeding each other back and forth. So when we're talking about folks that struggle with esteem needs, especially in the recovery journey, we find that these things are struggling, and that people tend to reside in a space where they have a lot of overthinking, right? The mental reels, the loops, the premonitions, the rehearsals, the replay over and over and over again of all the different scenarios that we can act out in our head that leave us in a state of of fearing change, not knowing where to start, therefore a fear of failure, which all fuels, a failure to launch, all because perhaps we're feeling invisible. We have this belief that other people see our thoughts, feelings, emotions, opinions, beliefs, needs, wants, dreams, desires as being invalid, not worthy of being heard, seen, experienced, or realized. And then in that, we often find ourselves in a place of lacking self-worth, trapping our self and personal esteems. So we begin hiding behind doing for others. We avoid quiet times so that we're not getting stuck in our head. We find ourselves being isolated, longing for what other people have or what we perceive that other people have. And now we're comparing and we're focusing on all the things that aren't right in our life. And then, the way that we function day in and day out is in a place of emotional insensitivity, irritability, agitation. Everything gets under our skin. We're frustrated. And you know what? If we stop long enough and look, we'll realize all we're doing is dragging all that past around with us. We're ruminating, wallowing, and languishing in things that either A, we've already survived, or B, that aren't even necessarily ours to fix. And that leads us to a space of needing to break things down. Anyway, so that's, my very short, long-winded, version of what esteem needs are for me. And I know, Melissa, because I've been in your groups. Again, we work closely together. We, in a lot of different categories of our life, professionally, socially, personally. And so I know that you see these same things transpiring in other people's life, just as I do in my work.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. And when I'm working with my clients, I'm always encouraging an increase in awareness in our body and also in our thoughts, right? So in our body, I'm talking about it from the perspective of symptoms. And so often we have symptoms, but then we write them off as aging or seasonal allergies or genetics, and we just keep going. But the reality is that our symptoms are our body's way of talking to us and asking us to do something differently. And so we're increasing awareness in these symptoms, whether the symptoms are the result of perhaps food that we've eaten because we have a food intolerance, or whether it's because of we're coming down with something, or whether it's an ache and a pain because we've got too much inflammation in our body, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, right? So that's the physical. But then there's also the awareness of the conversations we have with ourselves every single day. We have 70,000 conversations with ourselves every day.
I love that you always have that actual statistic. It's so rad.
And so how do we talk to ourselves? Because the language that we use in the way that we talk to ourselves matters. That is the difference between being able to build up our own self-esteem or to continue wallowing and languishing, right? And so as an example, I would just like people to stop and think for a minute about how you talk to yourself. And if you talked to your best friend that way, would he or she be your best friend?
I love that.
Because most times people are like, oh my God, no, I would never talk to my best friend like that, right? So why do you talk to yourself like that? Because you have to love yourself first. And the thing is it just becomes habitual, right? And you've done it for so long that you don't notice you're doing it, which is where the awareness factor comes in. And it takes practice. And I had to learn this too, right? And as you practice it, you get better and you start to catch yourself. So, we often, or I'd call myself stupid for having done whatever it was. I stubbed my toe, oh, you stupid idiot. Or you dropped something, oh, you stupid idiot. That was a regular for me, right? And when I started to realize that, I started to change that language. And actually recently in some of the training I did, the words we used were cancel, cancel, cancel. So you catch yourself saying, you go cancel, cancel, cancel.
Yeah.
As you start to get used to, I'm not a stupid idiot. But why did that happen? Oh, because I was rushing. So I need to stop rushing. I need to slow down.
I have to put a pin there, just because for any of the people, any of my clients working through one of my programs, so that I can cross relate that what you're talking, right? We're referring to the should statements. So go back and look into those should statements, those pressure-filled statements that you say to yourself. I ought to weigh this. I should be able to do that. I should this, I should that. Whatever those are, whether it's a should statement, ought to, whatever it is that's putting pressure on yourself or speaking to you negatively in a derogative tone or in a not feel good fashion, whatever's blowing your skirt up there, you have to look at those and be able to refine them and ask yourself, how would I prefer to experience this, right? This is, same thing Melissa's talking about here. So sometimes we have to, like the cancel, cancel, cancel. But before we can even get to cancel, 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 we maybe need a stop sign visualization. It's like, you're going down the wrong path. Now we go either reverse, cancel, cancel, whatever. And so all of you guys have a good handful of skill sets, psychological skill sets and tactics inside of your curriculum that you can pull from and try, that you can utilize so that you get into that position of being able to refine, reframe, and restate that dialogue. And it does take practice. You're right, Melissa, we have to work on it. Mm-hmm. Mine was, I did a lot of my work out driving around, right, in a car, because when I started this journey, was living in Southern California, and the driving there is a whole lot different than it is here on the Central Coast, and very, it's very aggressive, if you will. And so, it's very competitive driving that we have to have. And, everybody's quick to judge. So also think of being in that judger stance versus the stance of a learner. You always want to be inquiring and be in that stance of a learner, especially when you're talking to yourself about yourself and your esteem needs. So I would do it, I'd be driving my car and I'd be like, what is this person doing? And I'd get up and I'd drive around them and I'd look, and I started noticing. And one of the times I looked in the car, it was a husband and wife just totally enjoying themselves. I'm like, why am I trying to judge these guys? Like, for how they're driving on a Saturday afternoon, like nobody's in a hurry. Just because I've been in the car for 5 hours and I'm ready to get out, that doesn't have anything to do with them. Why would I, go into an ugly space when I don't want to be seen as an ugly person and disrupt their perfectly beautiful day by flipping a bird or whatever it was I was thinking about doing, right? And so I started this I started observing myself, my thoughts about my environment wherever I was. Like, oh my God, why is she wearing that? What was she thinking? No, cool. She got up, got dressed to feel good for herself, right? Like, I don't know anything about that person. Who am I to judge anything? Like, why am I so
I agree 100% with everything that you're saying here as well. And again, something I had to learn, right? When I was in the corporate world, I didn't know any of this stuff. So when I started in health coaching, I started learning these things and they make so much sense. And to your point, one of the first big lessons I learned that I immediately started implementing was turn judgment into curiosity. Like you say, learning, right? It's exactly what you're saying. And who are you to judge someone else? You don't know their story. You don't know their background. You don't know what kind of day they've had. You only know your day. And you can only be responsible for your actions or reactions. And I love the quote, in a world where you can be anything, choose to be kind, right? Let the judgment go. It doesn't serve. It adds stress to your body when you're in that state. And when you get out of that state and you get into this place of curiosity, you release that stress. You've got freedom to learn, to enjoy, or to move on to the next thing if it's no longer of interest to you, right? But you don't have to get stuck in that negativity, which is stressful, which comes with being in that place of judgment. And really, that's just all coming from ego.
Yeah.
We don't need to go there.
So, if we're looking at, our people's daily routine of, I get up in the morning and I get ready for work, I go to work, and as the day unravels, the stress builds and builds and builds and builds and builds and builds. And I won't talk about all the things you could do to not have that happen.
Right.
But we get home and our first instinct is to go for a drink.
Right.
Right. And that's not an effective way of listening to our bodies and giving it what it needs. That's actually exacerbating the situation, right? Because now not only do I have stress cortisol in my gut, I got alcohol in my gut, and I know most people don't just stop at one. And so if we talk about what the physical body's built to process, we're not even talking about diagnostic criteria for addiction or not addiction. Our human bodies, male, female, are not built to actually process more than 1 for female and 2 for male, if I'm not mistaken, on any given day. Yeah. And so who stops at 1 as far as females go? I know usually most of the people I run into, it's a bottle of wine every day. So now we got all the stress, we got all the messed up thoughts and feelings, and we've got all the, the cortisol things I've learned from you, like, I don't know, adrenal stress, right? Blah, 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 all the things. And now we're going to add alcohol to it, which is a depressant, which is going to ruin this even more, but, hurt our gut even more. And we wonder why things don't get better. We wonder why we come home and now all of a sudden our family's irritating us. The kids are too, are too demanding. They need my time. Oh my God. Like, imagine that. And we just don't have the wherewithal, and whether it's alcohol or whatever it is that you rely on that's outside of you to bring you peace, joy, comfort, relief, we need to change that, because it's just not effective.
Correct. It's not.
It doesn't breed good esteem. So when we get down to effectively trying to improve some of these things, right? And I know you have lots to add about the physical body stuff that I was just talking about, but we want to break it down into categories. We need to look at those things. Like, do I feel this way all the time? We broad brush things far, far, far too much. We broad brush it. My self-esteem sucks across the board. Or do you have more self-esteem at work? What about your social circle? Does it stink there too? Don't broad brush things, because you're exacerbating it even more.
Yes. And again, it's coming to the words that we use when we're broad brushing, right? And so you started talking about shoulds and not shoulding all over yourself. And so there's words that I have had removed from my vocabulary that I removed from my clients' vocabulary as well, because we can be so much more empowered when we use the right words. So instead of using words, I have to, stop and think about that for a minute. Can you change that to I get to? Can you make a decision and realize that you have a choice here and you're choosing this, so I get to do this? And if this isn't the choice that you're making, then make a different choice, right? Because you do have the choice. And there may be people listening who are going, but you don't know my life and I don't have a choice. And then I want to invite you to take a step back and get out of the nitty-gritty and just look at where you're at in your life. Because we can be on what I call the cause side of the equation or the effect side of the equation. When we're on the cause side of the equation, we are taking responsibility for all that has happened in our life. It doesn't mean we condone it, but we're taking responsibility for it, because that empowers us to take action to move forward in a positive way. That's where we get to say, I'm doing something, I get to, etc. When we're on the effect side of the equation, that's when we're not taking responsibility and we're very often passing blame. It's someone else's fault. And when we're in that place, we are choosing to be the victim. And we're choosing to stay stuck. And we cannot grow from there until we shift our mindset and, work with someone like yourself, like myself, that can support you in doing this, because I realize it is difficult. It is hard to do it on your own. But when you work with someone that can guide you into coming into the cause side of the equation, where you get to do things, you choose to do things, you take responsibility, you stop judging, you get curious, that's where you get to move forward in your life. And you stop using words like I'm trying. What does I'm trying mean?
Right.
I'm trying means I'm going to allow myself to fail. As opposed to I'm doing my best, or I'm going to do this, even stronger, right? The words we use matter. If you don't first believe you can heal, you won't heal. So all of my clients have to believe, even from one conversation with me, even if they don't have their own belief yet, because they've tried other things or they've been told by doctors they're never going to heal, they take on my belief because I've worked with other people and helped them heal. So I know I can help this person in front of me heal, and they take on that belief. We start working together. They start feeling better. And then they start to build their own belief. And that's when the body can heal. If we believe we can't heal, we're not going to heal.
100%. I want to really quick pause and effect, guys. If I'm to cross-relate this for any of you that are listening, think of your locus of control, right? That internal drive versus the external drive, right? Like if you're externally derailed, if things outside of you have the power to change the way you think, feel, believe about anything, or have the ability to derail you, or that you're relying on, right? Those external things versus that internal drive is where we get to cultivate all of our I believe statements in ourselves. This is where we get to add, edit, delete, change, shift, morph, make it our own. This is where we get to say, my recovery journey is mine. It gets to be however I want it to be, just like my motto, which is, this is my life too. It gets to look, feel, be however I want it to. I get to choose. So even when you're in a highly distressing situation, you take that moment and you look and you ask yourself, how much of this is about me? How much of it's for me? And how much of it is coming from an external source, right? And now we've got the categories, breaking things down, quit making them so big. Now we know what we can do with that. How do I want to proceed from an internal perspective? Like, what is going to serve me first? How, whether that's leaving a conversation because it's derailing or it doesn't serve me, versus getting into an argument and judging and getting confrontational and digging your heels in to prove you're right all the time. Right. So we want to be being able to move into that internal drive that allows us to not be manipulated by things outside of us that aren't meant to do that for us. Anyway.
I love all of that. You gave me goosebumps when you were talking about your own mantra, because it's so true. And I just want to say another favorite quote of mine, which is Henry Ford's, whether you think you can or you think you can't, you're right.
Yes, I love that
is
one.
The power of our mindset, right? And so it is so powerful. And that's why the words we use really do matter. And we've talked about not using the word should and changing the word have to get to. But other broad brush statements that I hear often are things like, he never listens to me, right? And again, never. It's so easy for us to just say these things. But the thing is that the more we say them, the more they get ingrained into our subconscious mind, and we start believing them. And they're not even true, because when you break it down, really, he never listens to you?
Never's never.
Exactly. That's a strong word, right? Mm-hmm. Just like I have to. So start to think about these words and think about words that you can use that are far more empowering to yourself. Maybe he doesn't listen to me when and you can come up with that specific circumstance. And then you know, okay, he's preoccupied in that specific circumstance. So you're not going to start a, deep conversation at that point. But you could say, I'd really love to talk with you. Can we talk when you're done? Something like that, right? As opposed to just continuing telling yourself, he never listens to me, so I'm not going to talk to him, or whatever it is, right? It's just an example. So these words absolutely matter. And understanding how powerful our mind is critical, because what we focus on, we get more of. Mm-hmm. So if you focus on the negative, you will get more of it. If you instead focus on the positive, what is working for you, celebrate the baby steps, be grateful for the journey, that's what you get more of. I hear people from time to time saying, I just have bad luck. This happened to me, and then this happened to me, and then this happened to me. I just have bad luck. Well, if you keep saying, I just have bad luck, and that's what you're focusing on, you're going to get more bad luck. So you have to consciously break that cycle. And you consciously break that cycle by choosing to focus on the positive. Look at what you could perhaps learn from the so-called bad luck, because as you mentioned earlier, Trisha, things happen for us, not to us. So they're happening for us, which means there's a lesson in it. And when you can focus on what and learn from that, you can move forward. So what is the lesson, and how do you move forward so that you don't even have to think about that again?
Well, sure. And that goes directly into everybody, our shelving system, right? And our night hygiene, which we use periodically throughout the day, and our CNP, which is our core non-physical feeling check-in. But we look at it, you've got to be able to visualize, and see whatever it is, so that you can go, this is the lesson. This is something that's going to serve me going forward. I can keep this. And instead of filling a bag burnt of all the, the stuff and carrying it around so that I can sling it at things as they come up where they don't belong, right? I can attach this negative belief to that new thing and see how jaded I can make it. Or instead, so once we get that lesson, that thing that's going to serve us going forward, we have a trash can here that we can actually utilize to throw it away, because we've already survived it. We've already lived through it. That moment has come and gone. That conversation has come and gone, whatever, right? Where's the lesson? What's the thing that's going to serve me going forward? It's the only thing I'm keeping, and I'm not going to carry it around. It's not a badge of honor. It's something that I need accessible when I need it, but I certainly don't need to carry everything. But it's about being able to look at, what's working well, what went well about this, whatever it is, whether it's a conversation or whatever. What went well? Why? How can I capitalize on that? How can I use this in other areas? How can I, shift it a little bit so that it serves me in other areas of my life? What didn't work as well as I'd hoped? Well, okay, let's look at why. Why didn't it? Is there something I can pull in from things that do work for me, that is already tested, that can, that I can shift? What parts can I throw away? Right. And then those things that don't work, we want to look at why they don't work, and then go, ooh, back to the drawing board, scrap it, get rid of it, quit ruminating and wallowing in things that aren't serving you, and try again, like create a better plan using the things that you've already, figured out, whether it's just for your mindset, your physical body, your emotional well-being, whether your relationships, your, whatever, your sphere of influence, whatever it might be. But if you break things down and categorize them, you make them smaller, you make them reviewable, right? You can't even review something that has everything included. Like, where do you start? No, like you got to have a title page and maybe a table of contents and, a glossary. Anyway, you got to have categories, and you have to have ways of deciphering. And I know a lot of people feel overwhelmed by that, but that's because you're still thinking about everything all at once, and you're not allowing yourself to get to one thing in the moment. one thing in the moment. Like, how many things can you do in a moment? Just one. If you get down to it, a moment is brief, right? So the overthinking, man, that'll kill you.
It will. It will. And the other thing too, that when I talk to my clients, because we're often talking about emotional eating, right?
Oh,
to ask yourself and be really honest. Does food really make you feel better afterwards? And when they're really honest, the answer is no, right? They're eating to escape the emotion, but then afterwards, what happens? They regret eating it. They might have a stomach ache or feel awful, and they're now beating themselves up for having done that, right?
Yep.
And so again, when we have this awareness, this heightened awareness, we can stop ourselves before we go down that path. And again, it takes practice. But when we're feeling an emotion that we think we have to suppress and hide by eating a tub of ice cream or a box of cookies or whatever, because we don't want to feel it, to instead ask, why am I feeling this emotion? And it's okay to feel this emotion, because our emotions are also signals, and they actually only last 90 seconds. They're a chemical reaction in the body that lasts 90 seconds. But we blow them up in our head and make them last way longer. And then we carry the memory of that event with us. But if instead we can recognize, I don't want to feel this right now, but I'm going to breathe through it. And it might take some really big inhales and some really big exhales. And there might be gasps that are coming out. I know, because I do it. I've done it.
Yeah.
There might be tears even that are coming out in all of this as you allow your body to process, to physically process this emotion and release it. Because when it's released and you don't carry it with you. And it's no longer being squashed, because squashed emotions cause illness down the road in your physical body.
Sure do.
It's part of the toxic load that I work with my clients on helping them release. And so understanding that too is really important. And again, when I was in the corporate world, I didn't know any of this, right? So I've learned it all in the last 7 years on my journey into health and wellness, and all the training I've done and implementing it for myself along the way. And what a difference it's made in my life. And I have such joy in sharing it with others, because you don't have time to go back and do all of the education that I've done. But I did sit there at the very beginning going, why didn't I know this about my body? Why didn't I know this about my subconscious mind? Because I've never had an opportunity to learn it. And you might not have either. And so learning it here through Trisha, myself, and others, where you can learn it in bite-sized pieces and start implementing, helps you become the person you were always meant to be,
Right.
Choosing your path and being empowered in the choices you make as you become that person you were always meant to be.
Absolutely. God, I love it. I love it because we're so just, you're just right on. And we're so in tune and synergistically, working towards the same things with people. I love how you brought up what I refer to as, just to back up just a tiny bit, but when we're talking about, slowing things down and really asking why that 90 seconds, we got to have that impulse control at the beginning to even allow ourselves to sit in that. And so we have to cultivate the art of pause and learn how to be responsive versus reactive, which is what's going to give us that capability. And yes, guys, I'm referring back to the work, but it's what affords us that capability to then say, I just got to give myself 90 seconds, right? Like, who? I heard Trisha and Melissa talking about this, like, I got to give myself 90 seconds. Like, hold your breath if you got to, but get some thoughts going in there that are redirecting, reframe, refine, restructure, restate, all of these things. Because if you can live this moment better than, or in the version you would prefer, then you have a stronger capability of living the next moment in an even
100%.
better fashion, and the next one in an even better fashion, and the next one in a better fashion. But we can't do that if we're going to operate in a knee-jerk, reactive, impulsive fashion. And this goes for all of you guys, right? Whether you rely on whatever it is outside of you that you rely on, right, to bring you peace, joy, comfort, and relief, whether that's alcohol, shopping, food, codependency, people pleasing, all of these things, right? We talk about it all the time. You know, it doesn't matter what it is that it is for you. It's still an issue for you because it's keeping you from achieving or attaining or realizing and experiencing the esteem needs you have. Circle back around, right? Like, how is your esteem going? And when was the last time you evaluated it in reflection of how happy you are in your life and on a daily basis? Because I know a lot of people will talk about, I really am not drinking that much, blah, blah, blah. I have no idea why I'm feeling anxious today. I've just super derailed and emotionally reactive. And we get down to it and it's like, but you did have 2 drinks last night. 2 drinks isn't, maybe not a lot, but it's enough to prompt somebody with anxiety to have anxiety in the morning, or even a regular person. I mean, what's the sugar content of that alcohol, right? Like, we could go on into a whole nother episode here, and we're not going to. That is my bad. I'm going to stop myself right there. Take a look at those esteem needs. When you can look at and find what your esteem needs are, or if you can't figure out them, right? Like, you're looking at the information we're sharing below, you're listening to this conversation and you're like, right? Reach out. Let's get you, on a path that says this is step number 1. It doesn't mean you have to, sign up to work with either one of us, but we can get you on step number 1, and at least teach you how to break down categories. It's a specialty of mine, is being able to see and create the different aspects of life so that you're not looking at this giant picture, that it can be small and it can be very specific. So anyway, oh my gosh,
I'm going to add one thing right there, Trisha, because you're talking about small and specific, and we are in a book club together, and we're reading an amazing book right now, Atomic Habits. And in the first chapter, something that I learned there was that if you change your behavior, your habits by 1% every day, at the end of the year, you are 37 times ahead of where you were when you started. So that's amazing, right? 1%. So 1% is that baby step. So what is that baby step that you can take that will start creating these positive shifts in your life?
Yeah, we're gonna end on that note. So everybody, thank you so much for being here. Melissa, thank you so much for being here. Please don't
always my pleasure.
I get everything turned off. I look forward to seeing you in a short bit. But anyway, everybody, thank you so much. You can reach either of us. All the information is below. And I'm going to drop a few other goodies in there for you. That kind of an outline of what we talked about today. And hopefully you will make one tiny little percent of a shift today and do the same tomorrow. Anyway, be well.
Bye.